All right, welcome back to the Illinois Shotokan Dojo. Today's class will be directed towards our purple belts, low purples and high purples. So today we're going to practice a little bit of Kihon, a little bit for Kumite, and a little bit for your katas as well. Okay, so to start off with today, we're going to be practicing moving from a front stance into a horse stance. So keeping the same leg in front, as you know. For some of the combinations that we have for belt testing for purple belts, you'll be moving from a front stance into a horse stance and shifting into that stance. So we'll be talking about some of the common mistakes and, of course, how to make sure that we're correcting and avoiding those mistakes. Okay, so front stance into horse stance, and then also doing a back stance, a front snap kick with our front leg, and then moving into a front stance from that position. All right. After that, we'll be practicing a hook kick. Now, I understand that a hook kick is not a kick that everybody will be throwing when they're sparring, but that doesn't mean that we can't understand the kick, right? So we can all practice it, we can all benefit from it, and then those of you that use it, you use it, and if you don't, at least you understand how the technique works, right? Then at the end, we'll be practicing reverse punches in back stance. So that'll be really to practice for the second move in Heian Godan, when you're doing a reverse punch from a back stance. And we're going to be trying to avoid some of the mistakes that come along with that and make sure that we still have a lot of speed and power in that technique. For the higher belts, you guys know that in some of the more advanced katas, we do punches, whether it's in a back stance or in a horse stance, across our body, right? Punching in a similar way as we do in the back stance in Heian Godan. So this is going to benefit you as well. We'll also be doing the crescent kick into an elbow strike like we do in Heian Godan and like we do in various other katas later on. We'll be stepping across in horse stance and also practicing a little bit more for Tekki Shodan as well. Okay, so to start off with, let's get to work in our stances. So first we'll be moving in a front stance, and we're going to practice having our hips turned slightly and our back leg bent. And then on the count of 2, we're going to kind of just compress a little bit and collect to the center, and then drive off of our back leg and shift forward into a horse stance. Okay? So when I say back, we'll return back to our front stance, and we'll just practice the same side repeatedly to try to get a little bit of that muscle memory going. Okay? All right, so everybody let's start with your right leg in front. Okay, and step forward into a front stance. 1. And now collect, compress, and drive into your horse stance. Very good. And back. Ready? Front stance. 1. Collect. 2. And back. Ready? 1. 2. And back. 1. 2. And back. Good. And now on 1 count, do the front stance and the horse stance. Ready? 1. 2. 3. Very good. And now we'll practice the other side. Now, something I want you to keep in mind, it's very common when doing this combination of stances to look forward to the second stance before you've really completed the first one. So I want you to try to be in the moment. When you're doing a front stance, focus on your front stance. Finish that stance and then move on to the second one. Right? We don't want to sacrifice the stance we're doing to try to do the second one correctly. Okay, now starting with the left leg in front. Ready? 1. Collect, compress, 2. And back. 1. 2. And back. 1. 2. And back. 1. 2. Back. Good, and now on 1 count, both stances. Ready? 1. 2. 3. Very good. Now, another mistake that we're going to look to avoid is when shifting into the horse stance, we need to press with our back foot and shift, which means the ball of our foot and our toes will be the last part of our foot to leave that spot. When doing this, we need to make sure that when we shift, our back foot is not left behind, but your toes come with. Okay, so when we shift, we push and then need to continue bringing our toes around back into our horse stance. Okay, so let's do a couple more, and I want you to focus after the shift on bringing the back toes with you. Ready? Start with your right leg in front. 1. Good. Did you bring your back toes with? And back. 2. And back. Good. And remember, we're still completing the first stance and then focusing on the back toes in the horse stance, right? Ready? Go. And back. By the way, anytime you hear a sensei say go, that's because they lost count. Just letting you know. Ready? Go. And back. Go. Very good. And now let's start with the left leg. Ready? 1. Back. 2. Back. 3. Back. 4. Back. And 5. Kia. And yame. Very good. Okay, and now we'll continue our stance practice with the back stance, front snap kick with your front leg, and then moving into a front stance. So when we do our back stance, our back foot will be pointing sideways, right? Of course. So when I count, or when you step into a good back stance, and then I want you to collect by pulling your heel back to your butt, bring your knee up, and kick right from this position. And this position is really a side snap kick position for other styles. Okay, so with your back foot sideways, you'll kick and step down and then drive off your heel, bringing your back toes around, just like we practiced in some of the other videos. Okay, so what we're going to do first is just practice in a back stance. And all I want you to do is pick up your front foot, kick, and then drive into your front stance again. We'll go back, and then we'll move forwards and backwards, doing the same. Okay, ready? Starting in a back stance with your right leg in front. Pull your heel to your butt, kick, and drive into your stance. Good, and back to your back stance. Ready? Kick, and drive. Good, and back. Ready? 3, and back. Ready? 4, back, and 5. Very good, and switch your feet. Ready? 1, and back. 2, back. 3, back. 4, back, and kia. Kia! Yame, very good. Shake out your legs a little bit. So now we'll step forward into our back stance, kick, and then front stance. And then we'll do the same moving backwards. Now, like we talked about earlier, when moving from one stance to another, it's easy to look past the one that you're doing to try to do the next one correctly, right? So the mistake that we commonly see when doing a back stance followed quickly by a front snap kick, is that the front toes will stop at an angle. So this is your body's way of making it easier for you. So it's actually correct when trying to move quicker to have your foot on a little bit of an angle like that. Right? So you'll feel like if you put your foot down turned like that, like you can push off and change directions to lift your foot up quickly. But as far as the techniques go, it is incorrect, right? So in the back stance, your toes need to be straight, and then we need to pull our foot back and do the kick. Okay, so let's try slowly to start. Ready, step forward, back stance, kick, and front stance. Good, and now step back. Back stance, toes straight, kick, and drop. Good, and now forward. 1, and back. Forward, 1, and back. Forward, and back. Very good. Now switch your feet, and we'll practice the same on the other side. Ready? Forward, 1. Back. Good. Forward, 1. And back. Forward. And back. Yeah. Very good. Okay, so next we'll be practicing a hook kick. So at this point, as a purple belt, I'm sure you have encountered hook kicks in one way or another. So you've either been practicing them and you know how to do them relatively well, or you have practiced them in class, maybe you've learned a little bit. Obviously you've seen them, but maybe you don't have a great understanding of how it works exactly. Or maybe your interaction with hook kicks has been somebody else kicking you and you didn't know exactly what was going on. So it's possible at this rank, it depends what the emphasis has been in your practice. So it's never too late to learn how to do a new technique or to perfect the technique that you may know how to do already, right? So today what we're going to talk about is how to do a hook kick from the very, very beginning. And that doesn't mean that if you know how to do a hook kick already, that you won't benefit from this. Okay, I promise you that no matter what the case is, this will help. All right? So to start with, we're going to focus on kicking very, very low. And we're going to practice really just the part of the kick where your leg is already in the air, and then you bend your knee and you hit the target. Okay? So really for hook kicks, the way that we throw them is with control, meaning that we don't kick the target and continue all the way through. We have to hit the target and stop it from doing damage and bring it back. And that's really what makes a hook kick difficult, in my opinion. Okay? So we're going to start by just bringing our legs straight up to the side, which is obviously not the best way to do the kick. But once it reaches the height of the target, then we're going to bend our knee and just imagine like you're taking your fingertips and you're slapping the target with your fingertips. Okay, so if it were head height, like you were just slapping them in the head with your fingertips. It's enough that they're aware of it, but obviously not going to hurt them, right? So now our target is going to be very low to make sure that we can do it correctly. So now we're going to lift our leg up to that height. And when it gets there, we're just going to bend our knee and just hit the target very lightly with the ball of our foot and our toes. All right, we'll just do that a few times on each side, and then we'll add a little bit more and we'll go from there. Okay? So ready? Let's start just in a standing position. Remember, you're going to flex your foot away from you, and then you need to be a little bit closer when you're doing a hook kick as opposed to a round kick, because at the end of the kick, you bend your leg, which shortens the distance that you can reach, right? Ready? Up, touch, and down. Okay, try to be very relaxed at that moment, not too rigid. Ready? up, kick, and down. Not too hard, right? Ready? When I count, do the whole thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy enough, right? And now we'll go to the other side. Just make sure I stay in screen. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. And now your next step would be to just kick the same way to a higher target. Okay, and you just want to work your way up to the higher targets. You just practice doing the same thing. Okay, and you'll notice that over time, not only are you practicing the impact of the hook kick, but you're developing some muscle strength for some of your other kicks, right? Okay, so now that's a part that you can work on your own. We're going to move on to the next section of the hook kick. So now we'll be starting in a chamber position, kicking at the low target again. So rather than bringing our legs straight up to the side, we'll chamber our leg. And I would call this a mixed, kind of a neutral kicking position in between a roundhouse kick position and a side thrust kick position. All right, so we're going to be kind of right in between. So we're just coiled up and we'll extend and then do the kick that we just practiced. Now, after we hit the target, I want you to bring your knee back and down rather than just dropping it. Okay? Ready? Up, out, kick, and back and down. Okay? Up, kick, and down. So on my count, we'll do the entire kick. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. And again, you could be kicking with that same kick to increasingly higher targets. Now, you might be inclined to try to kick those higher targets right off the bat, but really the most important thing is that you can do the technique correctly before trying to do it faster or higher, right? What happens is if you kick, even if you can get your kick to the target, the problem is if you don't know what to do with your foot once it's there, it's going to drop right into your opponent's arms. We all know what's going to happen there, right? So let's try the other leg. Ready? Chamber, out, touch, and back and down. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Very good. Okay, so now we're going to do the same kick, but we'll start in a fighting stance. And now I want you to elevate the target that you're kicking at. Okay, so if you like, it could be more of middle of the body, or it could be head high, depending on what your ability is with kicking. Okay, and again, I recommend that you work your way up to this rather than just only doing the highest point, right? So now we'll start in a fighting stance. Your back foot comes up, you chamber your leg, and extend your leg next to whichever target you're kicking. Kick and then down, okay? All on my count. Remember, try to be very relaxed. We're going to focus on not just getting our foot there, but bringing it back and then down, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and one more. Very good. And then go on to practice the same kick with the other leg. Now you'll notice, pretty much like everything else that you do with right and left, one side will be better than the other. If they're even, good for you. Continue practicing both sides. I'm a little jealous of you, to be honest. But obviously, if you favor one side over the other, that's perfectly normal. And it's really good that you recognize which one you favor. You continue to improve it, but don't neglect the other side. The benefit of learning how to kick with both legs is endless. And it's been found that if you prefer one side, it benefits that side to also practice the other side of your body. I can't explain that to you. Some scientists can, but that is the case. So practice your hook kicks, and we'll be back for some kata practice. Okay, so now we're going to be focusing on some of the basics in the katas, right? So some of the techniques that maybe are more difficult in the katas, where people tend to have a little bit more of an issue, where we see more mistakes. So I'm going to give you some tips, some pointers on how to practice it, and then the practice is going to be up to you. So I'll be recording some other videos for some other belt ranks. So what we're going to do is I'll explain these things to you, practice along with me. But then please take the time to pause it and practice, a little bit beyond what just, the couple minutes that we're talking. All right, so first we're going to talk about reverse punch in a back stance. Now, since you started doing reverse punch, we talk about hip rotation, right? Hip rotation, hip rotation. And the power for the punch comes from the back leg. When you're doing a back stance, you don't have that luxury because we need to maintain our back stance, okay? So that means if we try to turn our hip is attached to our leg, right? So if my hip turns, that means that my knee will turn, okay? So what I want you to focus on is rotating your upper body, your torso, okay? Without letting your hip and your knee turn it, okay? So we're just gonna practice doing a reverse punch. We'll reach out and then we'll just do a punch. Now, don't try to punch all the way across over your leg. Just imagine like your opponent is standing inside of your front leg, right here in front of you, inside of your front leg, and you're punching them there. And you should feel a little bit more freedom, more ability to add power to that technique, okay? So we're gonna create the power by being as fast as possible and then having as much kime as possible at the end of the technique. And we've talked throughout these videos about kime, obviously, is the connection, right? Is the stopping connection at the end of your technique, but it's not just in your fists, it's throughout your entire body. So try to imagine, like at the moment that you squeeze your fist, you're also connecting your entire body and connecting into the ground, okay? All right, so start in a good back stance with your heels in line, your front hand out, and be very relaxed. And when I count, just turn your shoulders as much as you can. Reverse punch and stop. Connect. Ready? 1. Back. 2. Back. 3. Back. 4. Back. Kia. Very good. And now obviously you can do this rather than the reach. You could just make this an outward block each time. So you get in the habit of repeating the block before the punch, just as you do in Heian Godan. Okay, now let's practice the other side. Ready? Front hand out, back hand back. Be relaxed. 1. And 2. Back. 3. Back. 4. Back. Kia. And back. Very good. Now again, after each one, I want you to think about whether you kept your back knee out over your big toe. Okay? So now we're going to move on to another section of the kata that generally presents some issues, and that's the crescent kick and the elbow strike. So this technique is done in other katas as well. So again, for the higher belts, this is something that benefits you. So we'll be starting in a horse stance. This hand out, this hand back on your side, and this hand needs to remain on your side until the very last moment when it does the elbow strike, right? You want to make sure that the hand that's out in front of you, the target hand, stays where it is while the kick is coming. At the moment that your foot hits your hand, imagine like this hand is giving a high five, right? So you kind of reciprocate the high five that you're going to deliver with your foot. So I want there to be some connection at that moment, rather than your foot just keeping your hand out of the way. They need to meet and connect, and then follow that with an elbow strike and have that same connection. Okay? Now, in any of the katas where we're doing the elbow strike like this, I want you to think about just using one hand at a time. Right? If it were just this arm, this hand would stop in this position. Right? It wouldn't just continue because there's nothing there to meet it. And it's the same thing with the elbow strike. It just doesn't continue out in front of you. It stops at that moment either way. And now imagine both of those happening at the same time with a slight overlap. And that's the connection, right? You don't have to try to smash your hand off of your arm or try to slap your elbow as hard as you can. They're just overlapping very slightly, so you get that meeting and that connection in the technique, okay? So we'll start. Their hand out, this hand back. Your foot hits your hand. You need to turn your toes so you can turn. Your foot hits your hand and they meet, right? There's connection. And then immediately after that, the elbow strike has to follow. So if you were to stand up while you kick, now you're waiting to come back down. Now that might not seem like a very long time, but when it comes to very fast movements, it ends up being a long time, right? So when I say go, we're going to move as fast as we can. Kick, elbow strike, increase. Ready? 1. Good, and back. Ready? 2. And back. 3. Back. 4. Back. And 5. And down. Very good. Okay, and we're going to finish up with a little bit of practice for Tekki Shodan. So we're going to be talking about when we step across into horse stance, kind of some of the details of where your arms and legs are going before you end up in the stance. Okay, and then we'll also be practicing just a little bit of rotation that's similar to what we were talking about in Heian Godan, but it'll be in a horse stance instead. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the very beginning of the kata. Okay, so when you step across and your knee comes up, where do your arms go and when do they stop? Okay, so the way that we practice the kata, what I want you to focus on is when your leg reaches the highest points, your arms are also crossed. Okay, so try to synchronize that moment in the middle of the technique. And then at the end of the technique, both arms will stop as your heel hits the ground. I think at the angle that we're at, you can't see my heel, but I'll show you again. Okay, so again, we're going to be focusing on the moment where your knee reaches the highest point and then when your heel touches the ground with our timing. Okay, and we'll do the same thing when it comes to the blocks on either side. All right, stepping across. So let's start by stepping across. And now at this point, I'll bring my leg up. But I don't want you to stand up. Okay? I want you to imagine like you're in a pool right now, and the water level is at your belt level. Okay, so when we do our stance, the water level is at your belt level, and I want you to maintain your belt level throughout the top of the water throughout the entire kata, or at least think like that. Okay, so this is the level I have to maintain. My knee comes up, and my arms cross. And then I step, and when my heel drops, my hands stop together. Okay? So again, across, very close, knee up, arms cross, and stop. Now, when we do this movement quickly, there's not going to be that pause at the top. It's just a point of emphasis, just kind of like a landmark for you. You know that it's time to change directions with your arms and with your legs. So a lot of times we're looking for obviously the physically best way to do a technique, but also the aesthetic value of the technique, right? So if your arms are moving separately from your legs, they're doing similar movements or at the same time, but they're not moving together, then the technique looks broken, and really physically it probably is. Okay, so again, one more time. Step, knee up, and down. Okay, now this will be the same where later in the kata, we step across and bring our arm across by our ribs before we block. Okay, so we want to make sure that when our knee comes up, that our hand moves across. Same time, same time. It'll be the same on the other side. Step across, knee up, belt level stays the same. 1 and 2. Okay? So that's something that you can practice on your own. And finally, the last point that I want you to practice is from a horse stance. And a lot of you have probably practiced like this before. Put your hands down in front of you, chest out, good posture, and just practice bringing one foot up and back down into your horse stance again. Very quickly, up and right back down into a good stance. And I want you to think about stopping back down into your stance, but controlling the step. So the ball of your foot touches first, and by the time your heel hits, you're controlling the step. So you're not just slamming your heel into the floor. Okay? You should have that kind of control over your stances. And then at the end of the step, the last point that we're going to add is some rotation. Now, rather than doing the actual techniques with our arms, all I want you to do is start with your hands up in front of you and just practice rotating as far as you can turn your shoulders, your upper part of your body, without letting your knee turn. Okay, so this is a difficult aspect of the technique for a lot of people, right? We get a lot of tension in our back. Our range of motion, our flexibility in our back is not so good. And so we either don't turn very far, or we let our knee come in so we can turn farther. All right, so we want to make sure that we're rotating as far as we can without our knee folding in, okay? So you can just kind of get an idea of what your range of motion is by having your hands up in front of you, right in front of the center of your body, and rotating and trying to keep them lined up. Just practice that on both sides. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Enjoy your practice and take care.